Okay, so just ahead of the confession, something from the drinks trolley, selected now by producer Suze, who's live from her own pub. What have you selected for us today?
Well, I thought a nice glass of Chablis would suit today. It's very nice and tasty.
Small or medium portions today?
Well, in the pub we only do small or large, so I'd go just a wee one today, maybe.
All right, thank you very much. We'll keep that for later. Today's confession comes from Matthew. Father Simon and the Papal Posse. My confession goes back to the early 1990s, a time when it was okay to laugh along to stories about goats disappearing down Cornish mine shafts without the fear of an Ofcom retribution. I remember those days. The background to my confession involves a relatively sheltered childhood. We were a Middle England middle-class family where rules were rules. If you went out to play, you'd better be home before the streetlights came on. If you wanted to go to the youth club disco, you had to be back home before it finished, or you weren't allowed to go the following week. You get the picture. I was envious of the freedoms my friends enjoyed with more liberal parents. I was always the first to leave any gathering, usually on the pretense of having to get up early the following morning for a paper round. Well, eventually, me and my friends all reached the age of drinking consent. In celebrating our 18th birthdays, Father Simon, I was never able to call myself a big drinker. But peer pressure being what it was to an impressionable young man, it was important to carry the pretense that you could be toe-to-toe with everyone else. Always drink responsibly, obviously, is the name of this confession.
Yeah.
What I needed were tactics to ensure my lesser consumption was unnoticed. After all, Mum would still be waiting up for me when I got home to make sure I was able to hold a coherent conversation before she retired to bed. Over the early drinking years, I developed different tactics so as not to alert my mates to being more than one glass behind. In bars, my beer of choice was a smaller bottle with lower alcohol. Baldrick would have been proud of my plan. Nightclubs were much easier. I would just wait for some great 80s classics and hit the dance floor, leaving my drink behind, never to return. Pot plants in restaurants would get an additional watering straight from the bottle too. Now, shortly afterwards came the day to which my confession relates, which is specifically the 5th of December 1991. A small group, Matthew, that's me, Mark, Luke and John, my friends.
Okay.
Together with Luke's girlfriend, a.k.a. the designated driver, headed off to Sheffield City Hall for a gig. Not any old gig, but an up-and-coming band with a #1 album in the charts. Not knowing the city very well, and Luke's girlfriend unwilling to leave her car in any old side street, we arrived at the venue with just 30 minutes to spare. Showed our tickets, had the perforated strip removed, and in we went, heading straight towards the busy bar. I was confident that with just half an hour of drinking time, there'd be no need to display any of the skills honed over the years for discarding drinks or missing rounds. I was one of the boys tonight, with no waiting up for my return. That was until the rounds of Dutch beer started. Half-litre bottles and rather strong. I think so. I think you know what you're talking about. Well, with a spinning head, slightly wobbly legs, and little aptitude left to realise I just consumed a week's worth of beer in half an hour, we headed into the stalls. We were walking down the central aisle when the lights went out, the signal for those on the front row to stand up and run to the stage, followed by others from further back. Well, I wasn't going to pass this opportunity up, and I ran to the front myself, ending up 5 or 6 deep from the front. Simon, the band were amazing. I was buzzing from the beer, and the hits just kept on coming. All the words had been learnt. We sang along with the crowd. Midway through the gig, demonstrating skills from the terraces, I had managed to worm my way to the second row back with just a group of young girls at the front. I had the perfect, unrivaled view. At this point, the lead singer, having the crowd in the palm of his hand, was working the front row, briefly shaking hands with the screaming girls and adoring fans as he went. What happened next has stayed with me until this day. The lead singer, half crouching in front of me, taking the hand of a girl as he sang, and for reasons unknown, I leapt forward over the heads of the girls and grabbed, not his hand, but the singer's ankle.
What?
And before either of us realised what was happening, I fell backwards. The momentum was taking me back. That's not the way momentum works, but anyway. My body weight shifted, carrying me back from whence I came, still holding the lead singer ankle tightly. As my feet grounded again, the lead singer flew over my head. With amazing dexterity, he landed safely back in row 5 or 6 of the standing crowd, where Mark, Luke and John stood with their mouths open. The crowd in the lower and upper circles were off their feet in delight as the lead singer hardly missed a beat and clambered back on stage and finished the song and the gig with renewed vigour. What a star he is.
What a star.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, I was a picture of never sobered up so quickly in my life. Fortunately, the lighting rigs focused on the stage, not the crowd, so the bouncers had no idea who was to blame for hoiking the lead singer off the stage, and they were looking at each other perplexed and not sure what on earth was going on and whether it was deliberate or not. The following day, I got a phone call from my bemused mother, checking in to see that I had a good time. She relayed a story she'd seen that lunchtime whilst watching Pebble Mill at 1. The lead singer from the evening before had been interviewed prior to that night's gig in Birmingham when he referenced the particularly raucous crowd in Sheffield the night before. Well, what were the chances of that? Father Simon, I need to seek forgiveness, not from my mum. If she'd been more relaxed in my formative drinking years, I might have been able to hold my beer. But I do need forgiveness from Ricky Ross, lead singer of Deacon Blue, for potentially putting his safety at risk and jeopardizing the rest of the tour. I would like to think that maybe I helped hone his stagecraft in the early days in preparation for the larger venues that he went on to perform in, but suspect that won't wash with Sister Susie. Well, we're gonna check that out right now, Sister Susie. What do you say to Matthew?
Yeah, Matthew, it doesn't wash with me, really. That's just all I'm going to say is danger, danger. There could have been serious injury happening. The tour could have been cancelled, and it would all because of you, and you can't handle your drink properly.
Yes.
So you should have thought about that. I think you lost your dignity, so I'm not going to forgive.
Yes, you can't mishandle a superstar. What do you say, Brother Matthew?
Well, I'm going to forgive because, he'd had a little bit to drink and he couldn't handle his beer, and he was honest enough about that, wasn't he? And, these things happen at gigs. Well, they shouldn't happen at gigs. It's not a great idea to be pulling the lead singer of a band into the crowd. No. But, when the muse takes you, then, what are you going to do? And if I know Ricky Ross at all, I know that he'd absolutely be forgiving as well as me. So for all of those reasons, yes, I'm going to forgive.
Okay, so we've heard from Susie, heard from Matt. Ricky Ross, what do you say?
Oh dear.
Well, Simon, very interesting. I'm currently still resting the ankle.
Oh no!
It's up. It was out of traction last week, so yes. I think I've moved. I've moved on, and I'll be honest with you. I don't recall the incident.
Right.
Oh, well, I'm telling you, it's the 5th of December, 1991. It's Sheffield. How can you forget?
Well, hold on. I'm going to get my diary. Hold on a second.
Yes.
The 5th of December. Oh, yes, right enough. Yes, was pulled in the crowd. Listen, we've all been there.
Yes.
A little bit of exuberance. And I think that I've managed to survive. And the only thing I'm doubting is that the names Mark, Luke, and John.
Yes.
I'm feeling a little bit. Yeah. Anyway,
sounds familiar.
That aside, I forgive. I forgive.
That's very good. And if you're going to see Deacon Blue on their next tour, which starts when?
Starts this Friday in Liverpool.
Starts this Friday, then please, on behalf of Ricky Ross and the rest of the band, don't grab any of the stars on stage and don't grab them and pull them into the crowd. Would that be right?
We're 30 odd years older, so I think my dexterity and my recoverability is not as good.
All right, Ricky, thanks very much. Have a great gig. Forgiveness from Ricky Ross himself.
Well, there you go.
How about that? Doesn't get any better than that. Remind ourselves of our special confession today, which came from Matthew with his friends Mark, Luke and John, and the story of how in Sheffield in December 1991 he grabbed Ricky Ross's ankle and pulled him off the stage, and he landed in the 6th row. What's going on? Here comes the people's verdict.
Forgiven, says Faye in Sheffield. He shouldn't have pulled him off the stage, but as Ricky himself forgives, I'll forgive as well.
Fair.
Steve in New Brighton, forgiven. It's all his mother's fault for keeping him on such a tight leash. The moment he tasted freedom, it went to his head. And Maria in London says, I love this confession. Hilarious. I remember reaching out and touching Peter Gabriel's hand back in the 80s. I can't imagine how or why you'd go for the ankle, but if Ricky forgives, then I guess I will too.
Ricky has set the example. Okay, very good. Thank you for the verdicts and your confessions, please, to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Well, now it's 5:47. This is Greatest Hits Radio. Confession time. Don't forget, if you have a confession, you send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Before we go any further, it's Thursday business. Time for something excellent from the drinks trolley. What have you taken for us today, Suze?
I've gone for a pale ale, a hazy pale ale, 4.7%. It's called Landing Gear, and it's by Baron Brewing. Very tasty.
Would it be something just to sample later, maybe, in the day?
Yeah, I would leave it till the end of the show.
Thank you. Matt, just remember.
Yeah, just remember that, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So today's confession comes from Tez. Thanks, Tez, for this tale. Father Simon and the Forgiving Fraternity. I would always drink responsibly, by the way, is a general word of advice, always.
Yeah. Good sign.
Particularly for this confession.
Okay.
I would like to tell you about a day in my life back in 1989 when I was a mere babe of 22, which at the grand old age of 59 now has been playing on my mind, and maybe my confession might alleviate the feelings of guilt that I retain from the following events. When I hit the age of 17, in 1983, I discovered what has been one of my lifelong passions, motorbikes. Living in a suburb of North Liverpool in 1983 didn't give me a lot of options for like-minded fellow female biker friends to choose from. So when I did meet a group of lady bikers one weekend from Cumbria, we immediately became firm friends. And for the following few years, I religiously rode up to the Lake District every Saturday night after work to meet up with them, ride our bikes, and generally have a great time.
Okay.
Fast forward a few years, and by now I'm travelling around Australia with my working visa and a Z650 Kawasaki. I'd managed to blag my way into being head barmaid at the Crossing Inn, an outback motel and bar in the middle of the Kimberleys in North/Western Australia, one of the remotest, least populated areas even for Australia. As you can imagine, a town, in inverted commas, of this size, populated by about 40 regular people. Not sure what regular people, anyway, just 40 people. Motel bar workers, a small clinic, a shop and a gas station. There basically wasn't a lot to do on your day off. Now, I kept in touch with my best friend Joe, who lived in Dalton-in-Furness at the time, about once a month just to catch up and tell her what I was up to, as I'd already been travelling for about 7 months before I arrived in Australia. So one day when I was off, after a couple of early morning Fosters, really, I decided to call my mum at home, and the first thing she said to me was how clear and quick the line was, and that I sounded like I was calling from next door. Aha, I thought. So then I called my friend Joe. As per usual, the conversation started with her saying, "Where are you now then?" Well, Father Simon, I don't know quite what happened with my reply, but the lovely clear line, the several early Fosters, had their effect, and I replied, "Oh, I'm back home in Liverpool." She was gobsmacked. She said, "When? Why?" So I elaborated with a load of old tosh about me being homesick, how I missed the English climate. I told her that I was borrowing my ex-boyfriend's motorbike and coming up to visit her that night. What? So roll forward about an hour, and I'm now on the Aussie Whites by now. Google it, she says. So I did Google Aussie Whites, and this is, I think, Yates's original Australian white, which is with added grape brandy.
Oh, okay.
An Aussie White is also a type of sheep, but I don't think she's referring to that.
No.
So I'm now on the Aussie Whites, and I ring her again to tell her that I have broken down in Burton Services, which is the last services on the M6 if you're travelling from Liverpool to Dalton, about 35 miles from where she lived. I tell her I'll ring her back shortly after an update when I've spoken to the breakdown guys. Then I advance onto the Bundaberg rum and subsequently completely forgot that I was having all this fun winding up my friend back in England. It wasn't until the following day that my mum managed to get hold of me, and she told me what had transpired after the last time I spoke to my friend Joe. When Joe didn't get another call back, she called about 6 mates until she found one who could lend her a trailer. She then drove with the trailer to Burton Services, where she spent 2 hours asking every breakdown AA RAC guy, "Where is the blonde on the Z1300? Have you seen her?" After 2 hours, she gave up and rang my mum. "Hi, Val, have you spoken to Tez?" "Yes, earlier. Is everything okay?" "Well, I don't know if you know, but she's broken down on the M6. "I don't think so. She's in Australia." "I suppose you do know that, don't you?" "No, she got home last week." "No, I can tell you she's in Australia." By this time, as we say in Australia, she must have had a few kangaroos loose in the top paddock.
was happy.
Good expression. I mean, she was going crazy.
Oh, right. Okay.
She was totally ropeable, which I imagine means...
Ropeable?
Ropeable, yeah.
Okay.
Getting
Good
really
translation
mad.
for all of this. Yeah.
Father Simon, I don't actually seek forgiveness from Jo. Trust me, she's more than made up for my trick on her. I hope she writes to you soon. We'll look forward to that. But I do need to ask for forgiveness for taking up too much time from all the breakdown guys that might have been spending time looking out for me rather than attending to someone in need. Lots of love from Tez. Well, you can see that if you've been on Foster's, then Aussie White, which I've never had.
And the Bundaberg rum.
And the Bundaberg rum, which I've never had either.
No,
but I imagine it's very good.
Yeah.
That makes for an interesting day off in remote Oz. But maybe some problems, I think, if you're a very earnest and important breakdown person. Anyway, let's check in with Sister Susie, see what she wants to say to Tez.
Well, yeah, Tez, I don't know. Maybe I'm the fun police here because I feel like maybe you were just having a nice day off and obviously you found it hilarious. But, you know, your friend was genuinely concerned for you. And I think it just comes down to the fact that I don't really like pranks. So I don't think I'm going to forgive you, I'm afraid.
Okay, Sue's getting totally ropeable there.
She was. I'm always getting ropeable.
Brother Matthew.
I'm going to forgive. And the reason is that, you know...
Think of something.
I don't understand. I mean, normally I'm in favour of pranks, but this one, I didn't see what the point was. What was the point in saying that you're going to be coming up the M6 and then not being there? It just didn't make any sense to me. But, so, you know, she'd been on the Aussie Whites and the Brandenburg rum and everything else was going well for her. So, you know, we've all learned a lesson, haven't we, about not breaking down on the M6. And I am all in favour of that.
Yes.
So, for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Have you ever had a few kangaroos loose in your top paddock?
I am, only when I get ropeable, though.
Okay, right. We've learnt an awful lot. People's verdict for Tez, please. Forgiven or not, 61054. But just before the news, we had a confession from Tez, a biker prank from Australia to her friend Jo back in Dalton, aided by some early Fosters, some Aussie Whites, and then some Bundaberg rum. Have you had that rum? You like rum?
No, yes. I've not come across
it sounds a little harsh.
It does a little, doesn't
to
it?
me. Anyway, with hilarious consequences, unless you were working for the RAC and the AA. What do we get on the verdict?
Pretty much everyone is not forgiving tonight. Dawn says, the poor friend. She sounds like a kind person who would go above and beyond to make sure her friend got home safely. I'd never forgive her, mate, if she did that to me. Ricky says, not forgiven. As Matt said, what was the point? The friend's upset and she's all the way over in Australia. And Banachek, who's also a motorbiker, said, that's the sort of stroke to pull on a mortal enemy, not a friend, definitely not forgiven, angry face emoji.
Okay, I think as Tez said, her friend Jo found it hilarious. So
did she? So
she's
it's all
absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Even though she does have some kangaroos loose in her
the
top paddock.
Yes.
That's the way that goes.
Yeah.
Your confession, please. Confessions at Greatest Hits Radio. But what we absolutely need now, then, is something to quench our thirst. So what are we grabbing from the trolley today, Suze? What are you offering?
Well, slightly controversial. It might be too early, but I don't think it is. I think it suits the weather. I've gone for mulled cider.
Oh.
Yeah, the trouble with that is it's cider. That's the problem with that.
Oh, it's tasty.
Yes, but it's still cider. So.
Yeah, but adding all of the cinnamon and the star anise and the cloves and the orange.
Okay.
And you could also add a splash of brandy as well.
Okay, Matt's becoming more interested now.
Yeah, and that would be really nice. And also, you could just do it with apple juice if you didn't want to do it with cider, and it's still a nice warming drink without the alcohol.
Thank you for the seasonal suggestion. Today's confession comes from Andy. Just made that up.
Sure?
You did?
No, I'm not sure. Let's call him Andy.
Yeah.
Father Simon, Brother Matt, Sisters Susie and Holly. Often your confession relates to events from many years ago, decades even. Different times is what you say, particularly Matt.
Yeah.
Well, that does not apply to this one. I would like to confess to my sins that happened on the 26th of August, 2025.
Oh.
So this is probably the freshest sin in your pile of misdeeds. That's true. That's true, I think.
Yeah.
Under a month back. So not really different times, exactly the same times.
Same times, yeah.
Exactly, yeah, same times.
My wife and I are currently on holiday in Jersey, and we decided to hire a small electric vehicle through an app. And the vehicle had a name, which apparently was Debbie. This seemed a good name, a solid name. Deborah, I'd have preferred, like the T-Rex song. But we were happy and we had no choice in the matter. The name of the car was Debbie. Well, wonder of wonders, the car turned out to be voice activated. We hadn't hired a new car for years and we marvelled at all the improvements. Once we had registered the vehicle, every time we approached, we had to say, "Hi, Debbie," and the car would open.
Wow.
On leaving, we had to say, "Goodbye, Debbie," and the vehicle would lock. This was a wonderful innovation. I always used to name my cars, so this came naturally to me. Did you ever name your car?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Susie, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Cars have personalities, says Andrew. Don't you find?
No.
Well, our Debbie was an absolute charmer. My wife really took to this sequence as we unlocked and locked the vehicle. "Hi, Debbie," unlock. "Goodbye, Debbie," lock. This was incredible. At one point, however, we were parked next to an identical vehicle. We were side by side, so we had to be careful. You don't want to unlock the wrong car, do you? Not as risky as unlocking the wrong caravan, maybe, but we still had to be very, very careful. I checked the instructions and I told my wife to get really close to the radiator grill and whisper, "Hi, Debbie." And then the right car would open.
Yeah.
Once we finished with the vehicle, the final command was, "Thank you for today, Debbie." The vehicle locked and sent us an email confirming that we had completed our journey and sent the invoice via email. What a world we live in, Father Simon, when we can talk to cars.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here is my confession. Mm-hmm. Well, you can see this coming. You can't talk to cars.
No.
Every time my wife spoke to Debbie, the car, I used the app to lock and unlock the vehicle. She doesn't know this. It was very simple, really, but enormous fun. My wife still believes that this is like a mechanical Dr. Dolittle. He spoke to animals. My wife talks to cars. He talked to tigers. We had discussions with Debbie. She now wants a new car so she can talk to it. Help, says Andrew. Anyway, just from a couple of weeks ago, how about that? A very, very fresh confession indeed. Let's see where we go with Suze. What do you say to Andrew for basically playing a prank on his wife, which is ongoing?
Well, do you know what? I normally don't like pranks, as you know.
Yes.
But this did make me laugh. Very, very funny. I have named cars in the past. I used to have a Corsa, which I called Cornelius.
Okay.
And he was very fun. But I just love the idea of particularly getting very close to the grill at the front and chatting
Hi,
away.
Debbie.
And you know, you never know. Maybe they will be talking. But even changing it on an app is pretty cool, isn't it? That's new. I had a new car recently, and you have to start it with a button, and that's quite fantastic for me. And I just think it's no harm done, is it? I'm sure his wife would have laughed along, so I'm feeling in a generous mood. I'm going to forgive.
I named my cars after Roman emperors.
Oh, do you? Do you really?
No, I used to back in the day. Augustus,
You didn't really?
Tiberius.
What?
Yeah, I
You
did.
used to- after Roman emperors?
Yeah, well, I quite liked High Claudius at the time. So
Oh, I
just,
see.
Anyway,
Augustus.
I've grown out of that. Matthew, what do you say to Andrew?
Yes, what a revelation. I am going to forgive because it was a great prank, wasn't it? Having your wife whisper into the radiator grill. Very funny
She's
indeed.
the car whisperer.
Yeah, indeed. And how's she not worked that out? But you know, I'm not saying that she's not bright, but you know, in a way, I very, very much am. So, you know, everyone had a laugh in the end, and I'm sure she found it funny when she finds out. So, for all those reasons, I'm going to forgive.
Okay, thank you. 61054 on the People's Verdict. First word has to be Simon. Do you forgive Andrew, yes or no? Before the news, a confession from Andrew about his wife who thought she was the car whisperer because they rented a car, apparently voice activated, called
Yes.
Debbie. Anyway, goodbye Debbie, hello Debbie, all of that, except it was just a prank. It was just Andrew using the app. And so the People's Verdict comes in like this.
Everyone forgives tonight. David in Bournemouth, no harm done and a fun little trick to play. Technology's so incredible these days. I believe the car was voice activated right up until the end.
Okay.
Dutchy in Leicester says absolutely 100% forgiven. If one doesn't make use of these wonderful gadgets to bring a bit of humour into the world, then what can one do?
Why are you speaking like that?
It did come across like that, didn't it? And Adam from Lichfield has definitely forgiven. After all, no harm done. And I'm sure when his wife finds out, he won't get a grilling. Grilling!
Oh dear.
Because of the grill.
Your confession, please, to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. And let's and stay together? Well, it's 12 minutes to 6 o'clock. Susan has come out to the studio and she's brought her drinks trolley with her, which is a very wonderful thing.
I have.
Did you get charged extra?
No.
Okay, what have you got for us today?
Well, I thought as it's someone's birthday at the weekend, maybe today we should bring out a big bottle of Gavi. I've gone for one for Terra Nova Gavi. Very, very delicious.
That would be nice. Thank you very much.
Here you go.
I'll wait until Sunday, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
Today's confession comes from Sir, because he's an English teacher, so we're just going to call him Sir. Dear brother Matthew,
Yes, good work.
The
Well done.
Sisters of No Mercy and our very Reverend Father Simon. I'm an English teacher, and I have a love for the varied and wonderful vocabulary that makes up our English language. In lessons, I like to demonstrate the meanings of words with real-life stories that pupils might relate to and remember. For example, I was born in the mid-70s, grew up in the 80s. That instilled in me a love of the Star Wars movies, Chewbacca and Darth Vader, practically childhood friends. When the Disney Star Wars films started coming out, I lapped them up, seeing them multiple times. One of these was the Origins film of lovable rogue Han Solo. When it was released, I went and saw it with my family. Then I saw it again with my friend, and then for a third time on my own. I tell my pupils this story because the third visit was a Thursday evening, the final showing of the movie before it was replaced by something else the following day. In that showing, that evening, I was the only person in that particular cinema. I was therefore watching a film called Solo whilst on my own.
Oh,
wow.
good.
Solo. This I like to demonstrate to my pupils in my English lessons is irony.
Is it?
I don't think it is. Isn't irony supposed to be like using words to mean the opposite of what people...
10,000 spoons will not be...
No, because none of those were ironic either.
Okay. Anyway, sorry, sir. It is with this in mind that I share with you a true little tale in the hopes of using it to explain further new terminology to my dear pupils. First, some background. In our home, I sort out the bins each week, deal with the bills, do the DIY. My wife does all the food shopping and cooking. Cooking really is not for me. I burn toast. One Thursday, sometime last year, I was listening to Nigel Barden making something far beyond my wildest capabilities. He inspired me that evening, and I decided to make family dinner. This was something I had never done before, but it would be a unique surprise for when my family returned home from the weekly shop. I couldn't do what Nigel was doing, but I looked through my wife's cookbooks and found something that seemed easy. It had a lovely posh name, but it was basically potatoes, tomatoes, onions, and cheese. I knew what those ingredients were, and I decided to have a go. As I looked through the cupboard, I realized that we were low on ingredients, hence why my wife was out shopping at this very moment. But inspired, I thought I could make a clever substitution or two and everything would be fine. I needed potatoes, couldn't find any, but there was a bag of southern fried curly fries in the freezer.
Okay.
I defrosted them in the microwave and mashed them up. I required a tomato. Sadly, our fridge was bereft of physical tomatoes, but we did have some ketchup. I substituted the tomato for a big splodge of ketchup. Next, I required an onion. With no onions in the house, there was half a jar of Christmas pickled onions. Pickled onions.
Pickled onions.
Pickled
Okay.
onions.
I've often used the phrase enough is enough in class and figured that by that logic, whether pickled or not, an onion is an onion. I threw a few in.
A few?
Yeah.
Right.
Finally, I needed grated cheese. Coming up short again, I used some thinly cut plastic cheese slices.
Wow.
After figuring out how to switch the oven on, I popped my creation in and let it cook for 20 minutes. My wife and kids arrived home as I was removing my creation. They were quietly impressed by the oniony aroma that filled our kitchen. Expectations were very high as I was dishing out, but unsurprisingly, the end result didn't quite deserve them. It didn't look anything like the picture. It certainly didn't taste as the book's author had described. In fact, it was declared a monstrosity. Utterly disgusting and quite possibly the worst meal ever prepared by anyone. My brief enthusiasm for cooking quietly ended. Now, referring back to my job as an English teacher and my joy of using real-life examples to explain meanings of words in class, I come to the ultimate point of this sorry tale. I hope to use my tame efforts to explain a new word to my pupils, that word being meta. How, I hear you ask? Well, I would like to request forgiveness for my ill-judged cooking, but not for me. No, if we think about who is ultimately responsible for my shambles, one could argue that it's Nigel Barden for making it sound all too easy on the radio. But I feel the real blame should go further still. The blame should ultimately go back to the Reverend Simon himself. I'm sure it was Simon's idea to get Nigel onto the show all those many years ago. Thus, it is Simon's fault that Nigel inspired me to create the failure that was my family's dinner. And therefore, I am putting it to Reverend Simon to seek forgiveness for the Reverend Simon from the Reverend Simon. And that, Year 11, is what we term meta.
Meta, yes.
Add this to the back of your books next to the explanation of irony, which I think was a little bit off, to be perfectly honest. I don't think it was ironic at all.
No,
because you've been listening too much to Alanis Morissette. Nice fade. And Sister Suze, what do you say to Sir?
Well, I am not going to forgive or not forgive Father Simon. I'm going to go back to Sir. And it sounds like a monstrosity you're making. It basically was mushy, loaded fries with
Ketchup.
Plastic cheese on ketchup on. It sounds disgusting. And just pay attention, really. You don't try and cook something if you haven't got the ingredients. And, maybe follow one of Nigel's recipes once you've bought the ingredients and you'll know what you're doing. And maybe that's not the point of it, but either way, I don't forgive you.
Go down the chippy. That's what everyone else would have done.
Yes.
Brother Matthew.
I mean, I'm going to forgive, because which of us can honestly say we've never, done the substitute thing in a recipe?
Like that.
I do it all the time. Haven't got any macadamia nuts. I'll use some chocolate. Haven't got any pecans. I'll use some chocolate. Haven't got any sausages. The list goes on. So, and also, I'm a big fan of any confessions that put Nigel and Simon in the dock. Very big fan of that. Let's have loads more of those, please. So yes, definitely forgiven. Very meta. Well done.
It was okay, even if it wasn't ironic. People's verdict, please. Before the news, a confession from Sir. A shocking meal he created and then tried to blame me and Nigel Barden. Also, he doesn't know what irony means. But anyway, Matt does, and he also has the people's verdict.
So Kathy from Halifax says, not forgiven. Any English teacher who doesn't know the meaning of irony is worrying, even though we ran out of cheese tonight and I put strips of plastic cheese on our chili. Jerry says, forgiven. I give Sir points for creativity, even if the execution was mashed to bits.
No.
And Brian says, not forgiven, using all those replacements, including plastic cheese. That's a recipe for great disappointment.
Okay, knew you'd go for that one. Thank you very much indeed for the verdicts, and thank you for the